Gracias. Bueno, primero agradecer a PECAP por la invitación de poder moderar este espectacular panel. Vamos a hablar del tema que ya se ha venido mencionando y probablemente va a ser el tema de discusión de buena parte del evento de hoy. El panel va a ser en inglés, dado que no todos los participantes hablan español y así entre todos podamos conversar. Entonces, good morning everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this panel at the 9th edition of the Peru Venture Capital Conference. I am José Deustua, I'm the Managing Director of UTEC Ventures, and I'll be moderating today's session on the topic that is crucial for the future of our ecosystem, which is critical mass generation and how to achieve more and better startups. I'm joined by 4 remarkable individuals who bring diverse perspectives to this discussion, each with significant contributions to the growth of startups in the region. Let me introduce first to Hannah, who gave an extraordinary presentation. As you know, she's an investment manager at Techstars and one of the world's most prominent accelerators. Techstars has played a pivotal role in nurturing thousands of startups globally, providing mentorship, funding, and access to vast networks that help early-stage companies thrive. Thank you for being here, Hannah.
Thank you.
It's also joining me today, Gregorio Gilardini. He is the co-founder and CEO of LEASY, a fintech company that has revolutionized vehicle financing for mobility drivers in Latin America. LEASY recently closed a successful 28 million Series A round, expanding their operations in Peru and Mexico. Congratulations. It's also with us, Eduardo Fuentes, which is the president of RUI. RUI is a network of Peruvian universities focused on innovation, technology transfer, and entrepreneurship. RUI plays a critical role in connecting academia with national innovation ecosystems, promoting the collaboration necessary to foster startup growth. Bienvenido, Eduardo. And finally, Charly Esnal, who is the CEO of Manatech. His experience in building bridges between Latin America and Miami is helping many startups expand beyond their local markets. Through his leadership, Manatech is positioning Miami as a global tech hub. Welcome, Charly.
Thank you.
Let's begin, and I would like to begin with you, Hannah, and following the presentation you just made. Thinking about Peru, what do you think are the specific strategies that emerging markets like Peru should adopt to create a critical mass of startups?
Absolutely. I see a lot of this happening already with events like this. I think inviting international investors to get different perspectives, to understand where they have been. Venture capital is much older in the United States than it is here in Latin America. And as Americans, we have been able to see many cycles of successful venture capital startups and exits. And that is, I think, knowledge and information that can be really helpful here in Latin America, where it's a much newer asset class. And so I think that's something that's really important, just to share ideas and to share like inspiration. The other thing that I think is really important is providing support for startups. Venture capital can be a mystery. Startups don't know what VCs are thinking, they don't know what VCs are looking for, they don't know what metrics that they should be holding themselves to. And so providing spaces where founders can learn from either other entrepreneurs or from investors, I think is really important. And something that I'm seeing, I just learned yesterday that there is, I think it's a law in Peru that all of the universities have to have a center for entrepreneurship or innovation. And I think that's amazing, and I think that's going to play a really important part in the ecosystem as well.
Thank you, Hannah. And following with you, Gregorio, so Hannah mentioned the access to VC, to funding. You have just raised a Series A, a very interesting Series A. So what do you believe are the key elements to allow startups in Latin America to scale successfully? And how did you leverage these to secure your latest funding round?
Hi, thank you for the invitation. So the main thing I think is that there's a beautiful saying here, perhaps less formal, but it's que mucha barca poca prieta, which essentially means you have to specialize in something. The world of startups is a world full of temptations, money, visions that you can change and adapt to. But I think it's really important to really specialize yourself in one unique product. Don't forget who you're building for and who's the solution that you're building for. No, this allows you to really make this kind of efecto bola de nieve, this snowball effect, and really marks you as a reference in the market. No. The second part that's extremely important is making sure you're able to attract the right people. You need to be able to sell a story. You need to understand that many times we as founders or as entrepreneurs live in an echo chamber in which what we do seems super normal. We know our industry, we know our market, we know our geography, but the person we're speaking to doesn't necessarily, no? So you need to be able to not only sell your story to attract the right investors, convince them that you're the right person to push us forward, but also sell your story to the right team, no? So we were looking at the slide before which spoke about the retention of this entrepreneurship mentality of employees. And you can only have an entrepreneurship mentality with employees if you teach them the entrepreneurship way of the kind of founder mentality of building. No? A part for me that's also super important has been to never forget that this is a competition. I think, again, we think we're doing something new, we think we're doing something no one has discovered. Good news runs fast, and if you're building something that makes money, you got to be building it faster than anyone who's competing against you. They might not be in the same market, they might not be in the same city, in the same country, but you know that someone eventually, if the idea is good enough, you have to be not naive and understand that someone else is going to be doing it, and you need to be the one who does it best. No? So again, going back to specializing with a product and making sure that you are the one that's driving it and knows it more than anyone else. And finally, for me, a part that's super important and you can't forget is that you do need strong unit economics. At the end of the day, you're playing with money. The word playing is not perhaps the best, but at the other side of the table, as Hannah explained, there's people who put their savings. No? Some people have more appetite to risk, but I always like to say tampoco tanto, meaning that venture capital, there's been, after 2021 specifically, a big change in the mindset in the way people want to invest their capital. So yes, you can have exponential returns. Of course, this is why everyone joins this world and this asset class. But you need to remember that at the end of the day, you need to make money. In our case, we're a fintech, and a lot of how we grow is with debt, is with more traditional capital. I need to attract a more traditional investor to understand the value of what I'm doing and why I'm the right person to do it. I need to understand also their risk profile is a bit different than the one I would have. And finally, I don't want to make sure I forget anything, but yeah, no, I think that kind of sums it up. It's a combination of really specializing and obsessing with your product and making sure that you are the person that can prove to the ecosystem that is a right bet. And remember, at the end of the day, that you are dealing with money, with people's savings, whether you know them or you don't know them personally. Someone put their neck on the line for it, and you need to make sure that you demonstrate that you're the right person to do so, in the right market, in the right vertical, and not let yourself take astray by the temptation on the journey.
Thank you. And if you can get a little deep on the funding process, did your local ecosystem help you? Did you have to search outside your ecosystem? How did you build that network outside your ecosystem if you had to?
So maybe from my name you can tell I'm not from here, a bit of an accent as well. I'm Italian, born and raised, so Peru is not my country of birth, but it is the country where, in a way, my entrepreneurial journey was born, right? So it's an ecosystem that I've seen evolve since 2015. I lived here, and it has been increasingly improving over time, but still, I think, quite far, as we saw on the presentation earlier, from where I need to be. Of all of our investors, only one is Peruvian, and for all of the other investors, we were the first investment in Peru. So we were able to kind of attract capital from all over Latin America initially, and then from further, no? Especially when there was little money in Latin America, I had to go to Europe, I had to go back to places which were off the beaten path, no? Again, going back to then understanding how you explain your story to these different funds. In our case, we also raise debt, so you can raise equity capital or debt. You can raise a combination of both. Big fan of that. But it also depends on the product you sell, right, and what you need to do. So in our case, we work with a venture debt fund. We had a great experience working with local funds and local banks. I think truly, to Peru's credit, the ecosystem might not be the most developed, but the world that it creates is extremely attractive. I've had the opportunity now, I live in Mexico, I work in Mexico, and it's weird because everyone expects all these other markets to be much better, but when you put it as a needs to create business and to start, really Peru has a lot of great points for it, no? And so with venture debt, you're able to essentially, going back to the conversation of working with local partners, yes, you can work with a local partner, it's great, but then the speed is too slow and you need to attract someone that you can prove that you can deploy capital at a, again, exponential return is why we're here, no? But yeah, combination of both.
Thank you. Following on also what Hannah said, and I want to get with you, Charly, how can we leverage and can we make and connect those bridges with bigger ecosystems, and especially Gregorio just mentioned that he had to raise funds outside Peru. You are building this bridge between Miami and Latin America. So what is the biggest challenge for startups in scaling internationally, and how can they build this international connection, especially with your hub?
Okay, well, thank you for having me here too. And it's funny because when I was getting ready for the panel, I was thinking, okay, you know, what are the challenges that these founders have? And then I heard Hannah speaking about mindset. That was one of the biggest ones that I was going to talk about. And then Gregorio was actually surprised when he started talking about niche and specialization, because I think those are two of the biggest things that we see. You know, the global mindset that is lacking. And I think I was talking to Alonso Mujica, he's also the co-founder of the Tech Week here in Lima, who spent some time in the US, and we were talking about that mindset that we see it maybe in other ecosystems in Latin America that also they're a little bit more mature. We just saw, you know, from what Jose was showing, if you go to Colombia, if you go to Chile, especially because it's the oldest one, I'd say, that has been investing in the ecosystem. Buenos Aires or Argentina also has a little bit of that, because Endeavor was there very early helping the ecosystem build, and you know, the first unicorns came out of there. So the mindset of thinking globally and thinking that I can make it, and thinking really big. It's not, and it's a challenge because it takes you out of your comfort zone. So I think that mindset is one big one. Also, the team that we were talking about, and I think beyond the team is the fact of moving to a new market, because if you want to make it, and I talk about the US, and that's why we try to put Miami, because we say Miami is not the US really. The US starts in Fort Lauderdale and north. Miami is still Latin America, so I think it makes it easier, you know, for founders to start really their journey for internationalization in Miami. But it's still a move out of your comfort zone. It's still getting out of your circle and your bubble of connections, and you know, it's easy to live where you're from. It's easy because anything happens, you pick up your phone and you know 10 people that can help you. When you go outside of that, you miss that network. And we were even talking about that. You know, maybe here you're used to, as a founder in Peru, maybe you know, you came from a good school, or you had some way of getting into money in the beginning to start your endeavor, and maybe you live in a country club and you have, you know, people that help you with your home and with your kids. Well, all of that is you lose that when you go outside, and especially in a market like Miami, for example, it's expensive to live. And so it's that also understanding that, okay, I have to start a new life in a new place. I think that's another big challenge that we see, you know, to get out of that comfort zone. Money, of course, you know, we talked about that, and in the US, just to give you an idea, was like about $140 billion of investment, and all of Latin America is $4 billion. So there's a big gap there, and it is an expensive market to go and test. You know, you need to have 18 to 24 months to just validate your product market fit in the US, and it might mean, you know, at least, I don't know, just rough numbers, but maybe $300,000. So it's like, okay, I have to have that money to even go and try to do that. So those are some of the challenges, but of course the the connections that you can make, I think the sooner you start, the better. And because of this mindset, you know, when you talk to what Hannah was saying about Pedro, you know, as soon as you talk to somebody in the US and you tell them, no, I think I can get to $10 million in 2 years, they're going to be like, no, that's nothing. Like, you have to think of billions of dollars. And so the sooner that you start connecting with people from more mature ecosystems, the better, because it helps you in that path. And also, you know, there's a lot of people that are willing to help, and we see that, especially in Miami. There's a lot of founders, Latin founders, that have already made it, and they're there, and they want to support the ecosystem. So, you know, don't be afraid to reach out. There's a lot of entities that are here to support you as well. I think that Peru, and we're still working on that. You know, we started doing programs for Latin founders in Miami since 2019, and we've helped 250 founders, and there was only one from Peru, so we need to work more on that. And you know, the agencies here like Pro Innovate or From Peru, and these entities that need to also build these bridges for Peru with international ecosystems, and we're here to support in that. But I think, again, you know, connecting with the different chambers, like there's people there's entities in Miami, the Beacon Council or the Miami Downtown Development Authority. These are hungry. They are hungry to bring companies to Miami, so they're going to be there to support you. And so the sooner that you start, you know, mapping this ecosystem of support. And happy to help, you know, from our side on Manatech. That's kind of what we try to do. We're connectors, and we're like, okay, these are all the resources that you have, but it's you that you have, as an entrepreneur, you have to start thinking big, start connecting with these international players since the beginning, and really have that belief that you can make it in another country, you know.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. So we have talked about bridges, we have talked about funding, mentality, and Hannah said something important about support. We have Rui here in the panel with Eduardo. Eduardo, it's great to have you here. Can you explain us a little bit what is Rui, what is its mission, and how Rui and Peruvian universities collaborate with the startup ecosystem, or how they can collaborate with the startup ecosystem?
Thank you for the invitation. First of all, about Rui, we are an association, a non-profit association, and why Rui? Because Jose Garcia Hertz was talking that in his presentation, because for venture capital we need investors, but also startups in terms of quantity and quality. And I think in that way universities play a very critical role. But universities in Peru need to grow in the process to promote more startups. And that's why Rui was created 2 years ago as part of the results of a very ambitious project funded by the Korean Cooperation, the KOICA, and also implemented with a Korean university, Inha University, with the idea to make in the country to increase the opportunities for startups, but based in technology, you know, because for sure we know that in terms of technology there are a big space for growth in the country as well. We have biodiversity, we have a lot of sources, but it's a point that we need to strengthen more at university level, no? The main objectives of RUI are two. First is to strengthen the capacities at university level. We are now currently 15 members, both from public or private universities. One advantage is that we have universities members from all the parts of the country, from the north, central, and south part. And why is important? Because we can invite a startup from different realities to be more attractive, no, to a possible investor that can see different options for invest. Second is that we believe that RUI can be an articulator, an actor that can link with companies but also with the government, because we are an ecosystem that still needs to get more in an evolution process, and for sure we need laws, regulations to promote entrepreneurial activities. And for example, RUI has an agreement with CONCITEC, the National Council for Science and Technology, and now we are also signing an agreement with the Ministry of Production, because it's important that they know how the process of innovation and entrepreneurship are in the universities to make policies more related to promote these activities, no? So I think that's why RUI is trying to change, and of course the curve of growing is It's difficult compared with the other countries in Latin America, but we believe that we are going in a good way. Why, again, RUI is a critical player in this process? Because, for example, to be part of RUI, all the members should have a technology transfer office and an incubator. That makes that all the members participate actively in all the activities that we organize. And since we received the support from COICA, the Korean Agency for Cooperation, we have 3 innovation labs. These labs promote the creation of IT companies, and that is really a plus for us, because in that way our portfolio is going to be better and more attractive for investors. No? More or less that's the idea. No?
Thank you, Eduardo. Definitely universities, and I think Hannah mentioned it before, is a place where startups can grow, and definitely the purpose of this panel is how to achieve a critical mass. Universities are a specific place where we can find that. But we need to work together, right? So we have here investors, we have founders, we have accelerators, we have universities. How should we work together? How all these actors can work effectively? Do you have any ideas or proposals that we can implement?
I can start. I mean, maybe we're missing 2 important components. That is the government and corporations, especially. I think that those 2 actors are key. I mean, we're seeing now, the maturity level of Santiago that we were talking about, and it's not only because there's talent and mindset in Santiago, it's because there's a lot of money that the government is providing to the ecosystem to ignite it. So I think it's very important that the government gets involved, more than anything in the funding part, in funding programs, in funding the private initiatives as well. And then the corporations, I think, are key as well, because they are the muscle. They are the ones that have the customers for the startups. They are the ones that have the funding, also the availability of being able to fund these ideas and these concepts for startups. So working more on that connection of pilots for startups, because at the end, it's much better for a startup to be funded by a customer than to be funded by an investor, with all with all due respect to investors, but because that's real customers that you're getting, and I think that innovation has to be a strategic mindset for the corporations as well. They don't have to think about, I have this person in the marketing team that is doing innovation. It's more the CEO and the board has to be involved, and they have to think 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And it's not about money that I put today and I'm going to get it back in 2 years. What's the ROI of this investment? It has to be a strategic investment, and thinking that they are supporting the building of these ecosystems, and to get those successes in maybe 10 or 20 years. But I think those 2 players are super important to be involved in this.
Thank you, Gregorio.
I just, a bit on the other side, governments I agree with to a limit. I think at the end of the day, we're in geographies, especially in Latin America, specifically in Peru, in which whatever can happen in the government, then your life kind of goes on as an entrepreneur, no? So I think the approach is much more on the people's side. Yes, on the corporations, because you need to have clients to sell your products. But I think a lot of people have this kind of mythical view of being an entrepreneur, of starting a company, of raising capital. They think it's like running a marathon with a backpack full of rocks, essentially. If you ask a random person where they start, they don't know where to start. So I like the idea of demystifying that early, super early. At university, you should be forced to create a project or monetize a solution to a problem. At the end of the day, it's what a business is, no? A monetization of a problem that you're able to sell to a larger market. So I think the most critical part, specifically in areas where there's more difficulty to access capital, is really showing and explaining to someone that with the right idea, with the right approach, with the right technology, with the right kind of mentality, you can really kind of go through it. There's tons of people. We saw the chart was mostly benefiting second-time founders. That makes sense. Someone who's played the game once, I would bet on that person more than someone who's never played it before. And the earlier you play it, the faster you learn. No, I was parallel entrepreneurship to education. It's essentially an MBA, but on your skin and in real time, and it goes at your rhythm. So for me, the most important part is just getting people super early to try something, try to make money, get that feeling of generating $1, of employing someone, of creating value in the little world that you're attacking a problem in. And really realizing that, yes, it's hard, it's always going to be hard, so it's a normal job, but the reward you get is worth the hardship, and the earlier you go through it, the better it is, and then you'll kind of have that snowball effect in the future.
Yes, I would like to say something because collaboration, yes, I think it's great. Collaboration is very important between investors, entrepreneurs, but you have to build it. I mean, it's a matter of trust, and also the other actors like the government, the universities, should participate actively in that process. For example, as RUI, we have a collaborative activity with the hub, Mining Innovation Hub. It's a hub that involves a lot of companies in the sector of mining, and we understand what are the needs, what are the problems of the companies. Then we can establish a program to promote more startups and also the technology transfer process, because the universities not only promote startups, but also we have technologies that can be transferred to the company. No? And also I think it's also very, very important that the universities establish a very important budget for the incubators. I think the incubators should have the possibility to organize their own programs, offer capital seed, follow the process, because then you can go further for the acceleration. So I think now in the country, we have a lot of organizations, incubators, but then the very challenge is to move forward to acceleration. So I think that is really something that all the organizations involved in the process should invest in create better acceleration, also involve to the universities in the incubators, and then in that sense, we will have better results, because I think the country is growing. That is good, but we don't have unicorns. So I think we need to move forward in that sense.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I mean, actors need to work together, not in isolation, and locally with international ecosystems. We haven't. I think we sometimes we have that challenge here in Peru where I don't know, VCs don't get close to universities, or corporations don't get close to universities. I think this type of event is very important because you get all the actors together. I will encourage everyone here to talk to either a university if you're an investor, or you're a corporation, or between corporation and startups, to start working together. That's definitely what we need to do. We are kind of 10 minutes left for the panel, but I wanted to get maybe starting with you, Hannah. What experience have you had working together with universities, or how this has, or do you have any good success stories about an ecosystem working together besides these type of events? What type of other activities or actions can be made? Yeah.
Sure. So Techstars has partnered with a number of different organizations. We have two different types of programs at Techstars. We have city programs, and then we have corporate programs. Corporate programs are usually sponsored by a corporate partner. So I started my journey at Techstars with Techstars Payments, which was partnered with Stellar Blockchain and MoneyGram. Stellar and MoneyGram got together first. They were interested in emerging markets. They were looking at Latin America, they were looking at Africa, and as a Techstars team, we decided that we wanted to focus on Latin America. So in that way, we were able to partner with these corporations. And there are many programs across Techstars who are doing that, not only with Stellar and MoneyGram, but JP Morgan launched a $40 million fund with Techstars. There's Techstars San Diego, which has partnered with the university there. There's a new program in Chicago who's partnered with Northwestern. And so I think it is really important for, accelerators or incubators to be partnering with these different kinds of players in the ecosystem, because like Charly said, it's really important for startups to have access to customers. And one of the things that I have found is that it is significantly more difficult for Latin American founders to access Latin American corporations. If they go to the US, American corporations are much more open and willing to work with startups. And I think part of that is just because, as I said earlier, that venture capital has been around for a lot longer in the US. Corporations have more experiences working with startups, and they understand that the risks and also the benefits that come along with that. So, you know, to sum it up, yeah, Techstars does a lot of work with universities and corporations, and I think that has been a really powerful reason for our success.
So joining programs, sponsoring programs, those two ways, it's important ways in order to start connecting the different actors.
Yes.
Thank you. And also, one final question, connecting ecosystems. So we're talking about actors within the ecosystem, but also Lima ecosystem or Peru's ecosystem with other ecosystems. What can we do? How can we make that happen?
Thanks. I think it has to do with, similar to what Hannah was saying in terms of programming, at least we do it that way. For example, we're now working on an agri-food tech vertical. You know, picking a vertical sometimes helps because it allows you to bring different stakeholders that have similar goals behind. So you can find, for example, I don't know, a cluster of companies that or corporations that are in the agri-food tech sector and they want to invest in innovation, and maybe it's a big group from Colombia and then another group from Peru and another group from Chile, but in the end they all want to see the same thing. They all want to see innovation. They all want to see what kind of startups can support their growth. And that's where the mix of government, corporate, and these programs get involved. Like we usually do programs where we're funded by either the Pro Chile, Pro Colombia, Pro Innovat. We haven't done it yet, but and then we are the ones that articulate these actors, like saying, okay, now let's talk to the Ag Center, for example. It's a group that we collaborate with in Colombia, and they focus in the agricultural space. So they have the relationships already with the corporations in Colombia. We might bring the talent from different parts of Latin America into one program. And then the fact that we are in Miami and in the US, that we can bring US investors to the table, it's, I think, what makes a difference. Because I think that those things where you have different stakeholders that have different weight in their industries, whether it's connections with the corporates, then it's the people that are in touch more with the startups, and then you have the us that were in touch with US investors. So when we sit down and we work together with the same goal, then that's where new programs and new concepts can happen. So I think it's that. I think it's really about collaborating from a selfish point of view, saying, okay, what can you bring to the table? How can we add value from our side, and setting a project together. So yeah, we've been doing that for many years, and having different ecosystems in Latin America collaborate with the same goal, that is bring more funding towards Latin America.
Gregorio, yeah.
Yeah, just to add, as a foreigner, again, not from this region, the ecosystem is the strongest part of Latin America. It's the only kind of geography in which you have one language, almost one time zone, to what together is the third world's largest economy, which is Latin America. I feel people don't speak about it much. I think, Colombians, Brazilians, Peruvians, but realistically, it's a homogeneous demographic, homogeneous problem, homogeneous kind of verticals in each industry. So for me, and I think as an entrepreneur and going through processes like Endeavor or all of these great kind of organizations that help put people together under the same room is the biggest snowball effect that still needs to be tapped into a bit more. There's still so much fear of understanding, but maybe Peru is a bit different than, Lima is different to Bogota or different to Sao Paulo. They're always going to be a bit different, but compared to any other place in the world, compared to Africa, compared to Asia, compared to Europe, where you have multiple language barriers, multiple differences in cultures, I think the biggest advantage, and at least what attracted me to this region, is the ecosystem, is the fact that you can spread like wildfire a bit easier than you would in any other country. It would be cool for more ecosystems to blend. I think it's happening more. I think Pickup is also a big example of it, but you need to start kind of mingling to get the real snowball, no? So educate each market individually, I think, has been the first phase. Now it's time to get kind of the rumble with everyone in and see how that pays dividends compared to everyone kind of going on their own journey in their own country.
Definitely.
I would like to add something because it's a matter of opportunities, and the idea is to find opportunities from different actors, even from cooperation, because, for example, last month, Concitec invited Rui to propose 3 startups for an event in APEC, because Peru is hosting APEC this year. And they are inviting economies, and they were thinking in organize an event for venture capital with the economies of APEC. So we proposed 3 startups, and I think that was a good opportunity for them to show what they have, and why not to do business with other countries. No? So I think it's good to always participate and collaborate between actors, because I said opportunities can come from different parts.
Thank you. Para cerrar, ya paso al español un poco para cerrar. First of all, thank you all. A few takeaways I take from this. I'm going to say in Spanish, sorry, Hannah. And I think you can understand me, probably, yeah. Me llevo 2 cosas. Varios años trabajando con startups, siempre la pregunta de todos es ¿dónde encuentro mejores startups? ¿No? Y ese era el propósito de este panel, cómo creamos más y mejores startups. Y creo que lo que sale en esta conversación de hoy es clave, ¿no? Cómo seguimos trabajando entre todos, cómo las universidades para mí son claves en este rol. Lo que viene haciendo Rui es importante. Son 14 universidades que quieren fomentar la innovación, quieren fomentar el emprendimiento. Pero si lo hace la universidad sola, va a pasar que no va a conectar con ese inversionista, no va a conectar con esa corporación. Entonces necesita que las corporaciones, los inversionistas se acerquen a las universidades y viceversa, para justamente lo que mencionaba Hannah, cerrar esos bridges, ¿no? Mejor dicho, cerrar los gaps, cómo creamos los puentes para que todo ese conocimiento que ya existe no lo tengan que aprender de cero, sino lo compartan entre universidades e inversionistas, universidades y corporaciones. Y lo mismo, cómo pensamos en hacer programas no solo para Perú, sino programas que ya incorporen esa visión internacional. El mindset, que es súper importante, uno de los grandes temas que trabajamos en UTEC Venture siempre es que los emprendedores piensen en grande, ¿no? No pienses en 10 millones, en 100 millones, como se presentó hoy día. Entonces, ¿cómo hacemos eso? Pensemos en programas internacionales, pensemos en programas no solo con actores locales, sino con actores internacionales. Puede ser el caso de Hannah, puede ser el caso de cualquier otra organización que ayude a los emprendedores locales a tener esa visión internacional desde el principio y pensar en un ecosistema latinoamericano como un todo. Entonces, muchísimas gracias por invitarnos. Quiero cerrar comentar que no solo es Lima, también son las regiones del Perú. Tenemos un evento a las 11 con universidades de las regiones del Perú en el piso 2. Entonces, los que están interesados en saber qué está pasando en otras regiones fuera de Lima, les recomiendo ir a ese evento. Y bueno, muchísimas gracias a todos. Thank you very much. And thank you again for inviting us.